And we are there. And Cooper,
Oh my
Equilibrium
goodness.
Master Roasters. Hello.
Hello.
How are you doing, lady?
I'm good. A little bit nervous, but really good.
Don't be nervous. I promise you, in 5 minutes, you're going to not even realize that this is being broadcast to the world. It'll be fine. We'll get into that chat. It's so lovely to have you on here.
Thank you, and it's a real honor to be on here as well. Yeah.
So, Equilibrium Master Roasters,
yes,
is what you're doing.
It is, yes.
And you just did a huge event in Melbourne around mice.
Mm-hmm.
And you do a lot of consulting.
Yes.
And you do all of the roasting things in the roasting world. So you're clearly a very busy person, and it's all under the guise of your own business, right? Like you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I started that business, like 4 years ago. So I sort of gone through the whole journey, started as a barista. You naturally go through those phases of training management, like 25 years. Yeah.
Dang.
Yep. Yeah, so it's been a while.
And have you only been in the coffee? I mean, how fucking young were you to?
Not long out of school. So I would have started, my first job would have been when I was like 18 or 19, something like that.
Wow. You don't look old enough to be in the workforce for 25 years.
God. Thank you.
Oh, welcome.
I think it's all the hard, physical, work.
Carrying all those coffee bags.
And all the caffeine. But yeah, no, so I was that typical uni student working in a cafe to make ends meet. And then just really realised I loved coffee and hospitality. And I think I definitely remember feeling I'm definitely a server, and I love that process of I think it's the whole instant results part of working in coffee that we all really love and get attracted to.
The instant gratification.
Correct. Yeah. And as a barista, that's amazing. Like, you get you get to make an awesome coffee for somebody and they're really happy. You're happy.
You get loved up on immediately. There's nothing like it.
Yeah, it's awesome. And then did a lot of work in lots of high volume places. So got to learn really great, techniques and processes and stuff. And along the way, then you meet lots of people. So I did all of that, started in Brisbane, and then did all the barista competitions. So I was the Queensland champion from 06 to 08.
Wow, you were competing back then.
Oh yeah, those were the days when we didn't have the 15-minute preparation time. Well, we had it, but when the time said when it would start, we had to do everything. We had to set the table. We had to do everything in the 15 minutes, not this, get everything set up and all, like it is now. So it was pretty tough.
Remember back then there was this is just in Australia. I don't know what it was like here back then, but remember back then, especially in Sydney, there was this real taboo about competing. For us, it was this thing of, and people would say it to me. I mean, I was busy trying to forge a way in the music industry on the side of coffee. And so I would hear somebody compete or intending to compete, and then they'd turn around and decide not to compete. And you'd ask them why. And they're like, such and such said that if I couldn't bring it at the bar, what do I got to prove in competition?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. This is typical fucking Aussie tall poppy syndrome, right? Like the last thing they want you to do is think that you can win something and go on to be a barista. I mean, back then, poor Jack Hanna and Scotty Callahan and all of them, they won World Latte Art Champions and all of that kind of stuff. And they got the shit beaten out of them, figuratively speaking, because, they thought they were better than everyone else because they competed.
Yeah. So that was my era, that whole, I think 2005 was when I first did my first competition. But through that, you get to meet really awesome people. That's when I got my first taste. That's what started me getting the inkling for roasting, because there's that interest in getting involved in selecting your coffee and going through the whole process. And then I was very good at coming third at nationals. I could never get past that point.
Awesome,
man. But I was always really surprised whenever I won the Queensland competition. I was like, right, really? I won. It was really cool. And then through that, then I got my first job into roasting with DeBella Coffee in Brisbane. So that was
DeBella Coffee, did you say?
DeBella coffee.
DeBella coffee.
Yeah. So then that was hard yakka. Like that was
volume
10 ton a
alone.
week. Yeah, so it was about 10 ton when I first started. It was all manual, all hand scooping and lifting. None of these, fancy silos and everything that everyone's got now. And then it was about probably 15, 16 ton when I left. That was about 2009.
How many of you were there?
In the roasting team, there was only 4 of us. But it was really well kind of structured and organized in terms of who was roasting, who was packing, and all that kind of stuff. And then I moved to New York in 2009. But that was very much an opportunity because of my lovely husband. So he was working for Colgate at the time, and head office is in Manhattan, and the technology center was in Jersey. So he got sponsored to go and work with them. And then I could jump on the visa. So it was really cool. So he had to stay with Colgate and I could do whatever the hell I wanted. So it was really awesome.
Fun times. Who did you work for in New York?
I ended up working for Dallas Brothers Coffee. And I have to say, I was actually having a chat with some people recently, and it just struck me. I just remembered, again, reminding myself about how I got that job. And that was just because of pure networking, getting to know people. And I when I arrived in New York, I actually panicked. I actually didn't think I was good enough to be able to get a job. And I actually went back to Australia briefly, thinking that I had to stay, and because it's what I knew, and you're not really sure of yourself. And for me, I'd done my Q graders, I was trying, like, looking ahead to see what would help me with the US. But just personally, you just kind of go, oh, that's it, I'm not good enough. But I went, no, stuff it, go back. So I went back, and Dallas Brothers would have their monthly kind of cupping sessions. And so, and it was a genuine case of, so let me stay behind and help you clean up the cupping. And so, by the way, do you have any jobs available?
Yeah,
and
good work.
It just so happened that, because they're a 100-year-old company, and they were setting up their specialty division. And so that wasn't going to be ready for a couple of months because they were installing the machines and getting that ready. So then in the meantime, I volunteered for the VP of sales, has an autistic son. So he used to do the markets down at South Street Seaport. So that gave me a chance just to get to know the coffee a bit better and serve coffee and all that kind of stuff, and just wait then for the roasters to get installed. And then it all just kind of went from there. So yeah, really good lessons learned working. Obviously in the US, coming from Australia, we've definitely from a wages perspective, of course, because
crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
phenomenal.
Yeah, so going from being, I guess it's the whole balancing act of cost of living and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, here in Australia, it's quite high. In New York, you can eat out, every day. You wouldn't even know that.
Not now, you can't.
True, but yeah,
it's all changed now.
Yeah, cost of living in real estate is definitely pretty tricky.
Oh yeah.
But the wages were very interesting. So because the roasters were on the factory floor, I was technically meant to get paid $7 an hour, and then had to get approval to get a slightly higher wage, because there was always overtime. You had to, you just got to get shit done. And there's days when you're doing 10, 12-hour days, and so yeah, managed to get a slight little increase in the wages. But again, I would never have been able to work in the US if I didn't have the opportunity. 100%, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Look, the kinds of wages that I hear that people are on, it blows my fucking mind.
Yeah, definitely.
It's honestly was a big motivator for what we're trying to achieve with Mapper Forward and why it exists. There's a real disconnect. It's the thing I have charged myself with this year is to bridge the divide between the way that owners of businesses in the coffee industry and employees of businesses in the coffee industry, the way that they see each other's roles. And that was
definitely, I was going to say, we were trying to help them at Dallas Brothers understand, more so upper management and financials, let them know that we're bringing a skill to their business, and so sort of helping them work through that. This
idea, and perhaps I'm being far too idealistic, but I've lost all faith in humanity.
Oh no!
And look, living here will easily do that to you, especially when you're willing to see the world for what it is rather than just live in a pretty little bubble. And I'm a very positive person. I'm somebody who always, despite what people might think, I am always the first person who's looking for the solution to every fucking challenge that's out there. And that's my version of positivity. I'm not the rah-rah kind of, feed you a bunch of bullshit words and make you believe for 5 seconds that everything's going to be okay. That's a kind of positivity that there's far too much of, and it means fucking nothing. Like, at the end of the day, I'm the kind of positive that's, okay, let's identify what the challenge is, and I know we can find a solution, and that's how we're going to figure out our way out of this. That's my version of positivity, right?
Yeah.
But with that, you cannot be shifting things around. You cannot be progressing anything if you're not willing to see the state of the way that things are. And for me, in this industry, we have a real serious problem if we're going to be paying our employees shit money because we don't think that we're going to be able to survive, or our employees don't deserve that. I said to a cafe owner that I met that I found out was paying minimum wage. And look, minimum wage here in California is $11.50, which is double what it is in some other states. But our cost of living here in California is
it would be
crazy.
I could imagine.
It is crazy. So when I said to this employee, I'm like, are you aware, like, I've spoken to your employees, are you aware that they do not eat unless they're at work? They cannot afford to eat unless they're at work.
Yeah, and that really struck me, especially in New York as well. A lot of people, if they wanted to stay in coffee, they had to have at least another 2 jobs. And I think, again, coming from Australia, where we have the ability to, and I'm not trying to put a blanket over everyone, but you can successfully work fairly well in one job and be able to get by okay. And it really struck me in the US just how tough it is for some of the coffee community to, if they really love coffee and they want to commit, to the industry, unfortunately they can't just do it with that one coffee job sometimes. And I felt that I thought so many Australian coffee people need to understand that, and if they do have the opportunity to work in another country's culture, and if you have the ability, do it. Like, really,
you come back with such a great appreciation for what we have established in Australia.
Oh, you do, 100%, absolutely. You really realise just how
good we've got it in Australia.
We do,
I was
even though sometimes it doesn't.
Let's go ahead, even though it doesn't feel like it.
Even though sometimes, and that's why I think if you have the opportunity to, I guess, break out of your, your world or your bubble, whatever it is, and give you a chance to see just how other, coffee people are doing it in their culture and industry. And it really helps us just be a bit more grounded.
I agree. I was speaking to a roaster for a fairly well-known roaster here in California. And he was telling me how he wanted to leave his job, but he couldn't leave his job. When I asked him why, and he said to me, well, I'm not getting paid enough. And I said, when did you get your last pay rise? And he said, I got 3 pay rises this year. I'm like, well, what the fuck are you going on about? And he said, Lee, I make $12 an hour. Each one of my pay rises was under 20 cents an hour.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
If you're getting 3 pay rises and you're on $12 an hour and you are the sole responsibility of the product that this business is selling, come on, there's a complete disconnect there between the person who is doing all the work and the person who's claiming all the wins. And I'm a massive fan of competitiveness with regards to the idea behind capitalism. I think that capitalism is a good thing. It drives our society forward, but I'm also a conscious capitalist. And in that, I mean that we don't have to have the concentration of wealth always at the top. Like, we can feed our employees so that they have good lives, because without them, we don't have businesses.
Correct.
We don't, be proud of the people that you bring into your business. Treat them well, and they will treat you well.
Yeah, definitely.
I live by this thing, and it's the statement that's driving everything for Map It Forward right now is conspiring to each other's success. And I'm on a mission to inject more empathy into our industry because, you know, in times like this that we're experiencing in the world, And because I have this whole thing of I've lost all faith in humanity, I want to find a solution to that because I hate feeling like this. And so, you know, I speak my truth, but at the same time, nobody wants to feel shit long term. And so the way that I feel that we're going to change a lot of what's going on and a lot of the disharmony that we're feeling as employees is to have people feel empathy towards each other and want each other to succeed. You know, your success is my success because you're a fucking badass in this industry. And if we can elevate Ann Cooper up to be her best self, well, then we win as an industry because she's a badass and look what you can achieve if you work your ass off, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And that's the approach that I want to see more people taking rather than, no, I've got to win it all for me because if I win it all, nobody can take it away from me. Well, let me tell you, sunshine, it can all go in a second.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But anyway, so you're in New York.
I'm in New York. I know we're good at segueing, aren't we?
Okay.
Yeah. So New York was awesome, and so I mean, I don't know whether it was, you know, the time I was there. You know, you're a starry-eyed Aussie, you know, floating around in this city, and I never forget. Probably the first couple of months, I just felt like I was in a big movie set because it was just kind of like, oh, I saw that on CSI. Oh, I saw that on, you know, you start seeing movie scenes and TV scenes, and everything. So you kind of have a bit of a giggle to yourself, and then you just get into day to day, and you just become that. It just becomes your place. And I think the thing I loved about New York was that you could be who you wanted to be, and then find your place in that city as well. So, because I had to commute because we were living in Hoboken, and I had to commute out to Queens. So it was about an hour and a half commute each way, each day. And that was really good grounding, I felt, for me too, because, you know, I had to get ferry, then a train, and I had to walk then for 30 minutes from the train stop to work and everything. And so, but it was actually, I really enjoyed it because the downtime, especially after a big roasting day, I really loved just chilling out on the train or just walking and all that kind of stuff, and just the general, you know. And you do find yourself, when we left, we were like, damn it, we were those people that went, we sort of got into the day-to-day and didn't get a chance to go and, you know, explore a bit more. And it was a little bit of like, oh, I wish we'd done that, or wish we'd done that.
Wow. Well, you could go back on the holidays and do that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
You must have a massive network in New York, or
definitely.
Good friends that you can go and, I mean, you need a bank behind you to go and spend a couple of weeks in New York now.
I know, definitely know. Yes, I'm going to put through in April after Boston, and even I'm just like going, I can only afford to stay like only 2 days or something. Yeah, definitely.
It's crazy expensive, but what isn't
it is
now?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but even working, even like that working at Dallas Brothers, there was still an element of, I did notice, because there's so many people in New York, and there's this kind of underlying feeling as well. You just kind of know why people are there. We're all there to either succeed in some way with what we're doing, and like, you know, New York's the place to go and, you know, do whatever. And there is a little bit of an element of, you do need to, like, I really had to fight at some point to really, you know, stay on top, you know, in my role as a main roaster there. And because, you know, and it's normal for companies to sort of search and look out for other talent and bring, they're going to bring in someone from Stumptown, or they're going to bring in someone from Intelli because that's a famous company, hence this roaster must know more and all that kind of stuff. So there was definitely a point I remember saying to myself, I have to fight hard, and there is no way someone else is going to, you know, come in and, you know, get on my roaster kind of thing. And so there's definitely yeah, absolutely.
Good for you.
And there's definitely an element of that really taught me to fight for what you want to do, and but you've also got to be mindful too. You've also got a brand to consider and what they need to achieve and all that kind of stuff. And definitely dealt with some amazing, probably one of my favorite people to deal with was, just gone blank, the guys from, we've got 3 cafes in Alphabet City and Chelsea Market, 9th Street Espresso. So, yeah, so this was a cafe, very passionate about only using Brazil coffees, because just Dallas Brothers at the time was owned by a Brazilian company. And then working with that cafe owner was awesome because they were very clear about what they wanted. They only wanted me to roast their coffee and do all their QC with them. And they were doing like a ton a week. The volume in New York is just phenomenal.
And just tell me something.
It's like, yeah.
As an Aussie, and this is something I've struggled with living here. And I had lived in America before. But I was based in LA for a couple of years. Which is a whole other level of crazy. But the thing that I'm noticing that I struggle to wrap my head around is the sheer volume of people in this country. Like
the average cafe in New York, average normal cafe would be doing 50, 60 kilos a week. Whereas...
Why clarify that? Tell people how they're doing that. That's not espresso.
No, and it's all batch brew. 100%.
So let's
it's all drip.
While that's a lot of coffee, it's still not high volume in the same way that Australian cafes
that we
are doing
consider
high volume.
Exactly.
So it's less labor intensive and all of that. So the only reason I clarify that is because I'm a real stickler for people going on about, we're a high volume cafe. How many espressos are you doing? 13? Not kilos, 13 espressos.
Exactly. Sorry, I interrupted your...
No, not at all. But yeah, it's very much very overwhelming, because 22 million people in the whole fucking country of Australia versus 320 or 350 million here. And the landmass here is not that much more massive than Australia. And, no wonder the coffee industry over here evolved to have mostly drip-focused environment, because how do you get that many people their coffee every day if it's going to be espresso-based? It's pretty difficult.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
With regards to your roasting experience over here with Dallas Brothers. With a roast, I mean, over here they tend to like darker roasts. Go ahead. I think you know where I was going with that.
I think so, but I think the thing I realised, I was trying to understand the similarities and the differences, and I think the one thing I did see, we are kind of like defining the roasts in terms of whether it's espresso or drip, but really technically, what I saw is that even the house blend roasts we were doing for drip in the US is similar to the house blend roasts we're doing here for our espresso. It's just that they're being extracted differently, but we're also then defining them, as, espresso or drip, even though technically there might be a fairly similar roast level and even roast approach as well. Just the end point was different.
And did you find that, having gone from roasting in Australia to roasting in the US, that the drinking culture was requiring you to approach roasting differently in different flavor profiles, or was it all much of a muchness?
Kind of like a bit of both. I was quite fascinated with, I'd always, like, obviously coming from DeBella, where it was still very Italian, sort of like, dark roast, but like coming to the US, it was like dark, like it was with the French or even darker roasts. Like
what did
the
they call
literally
Mid-City or something? I don't know.
I don't know. I didn't really embrace that terminology, but definitely seeing the coffee coming out and it's literally bleeding oil straight away. I just went, oh wow, I'd never seen it like that far. But then when you seeing it all getting packed up into all the frat packs and then all getting all ready to go for all the batch brew, and then you realise that they're doing exactly the same as us with our big, takeaway espressos with milk and everything. We're still putting in milk, cream, sugar, flavouring, all that kind of stuff. But the other fun thing I thought was really different was then going the opposite way. It was with Indonesian coffees. Like here in Australia, we'd always been roasting Indonesian coffees quite dark because we wanted to embrace the body and the sweetness. But in the US, it was being roasted quite light. And it was the first time I'd ever done a light roast of an Indonesian coffee. And I just remember freaking out going, oh my God, this is going to just taste like capsicum and like all these really crazy high acidic flavors that we'd never embraced here in Australia. So things like that, because I know there's a really big, well, at the time when I was there, a preference for Indonesian coffees and Sumatrans and really in love with that bell pepper kind of flavor. And it was just like, wow.
Yeah. Wow. That's super old school though.
Isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
They definitely step away from that now. It's all about Rwandans and Burundis and
okay, cool.
Particularly Rwandans. Rwandans are a big thing over here.
Yep.
And the usual Ethiopians and
things
like that. As more people move towards relationship buying, you're starting to see a lot more of the Colombians and Guatemalans and Costa Ricans because it's very close.
Yes. So yeah, exactly.
They want their customers to see that they're going to Origin and buying the coffees. Well, the cheapest flights are to Costa Rica.
Yeah, exactly. And you're there in 10 hours and it's, it's easy. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah. A lot. It's a couple of hours.
Yeah.
From especially from here. I'd send it. Mexico.
Yes, of course. Yeah, for you guys. Yeah.
Dude, Mexico is literally 15 minutes drive from my front door.
Oh my God.
Literally.
Wow. Literally.
If I get on the trolley, which is it's like an 8-minute walk from my apartment, I get on the trolley and in 15 minutes, maybe 18 minutes, I am at
across the border. Wow.
And that's how close it all is to us. And so because they want to step, and it's a great way to step into going to Origin, it's not that far from here. There's a fuck ton of American tourists there anyway.
Yeah.
And so they go there and, big green buying companies are taking people now to on the regular to these places. So
yeah, definitely.
Why not? And this is that's what you're seeing a lot of here now is those kinds of coffees, because for the right reasons, we want people to be able to have a story to talk about behind the coffees that they're serving, because it gets people it gets customers invested into that.
Yep, definitely. Yep. Yeah.
Have you noticed that the way that people are drinking coffee now than when you started roasting?
Yep.
Has evolved in a big way. The coffee drinking culture, not
exactly
our culture, not the specialty coffee people, but the coffee drinking culture.
Yeah, I definitely I often talk about with people either in coffee or wanting to get into coffee about the whole drinkers versus tasters. Definitely when we all first started in coffee, it was all about just give me that chuggable, yummy, warm cup of coffee because it tastes like coffee. And then, definitely seeing more of those drinkers starting to turn into tasters and actually appreciate and, cutting back on milk, cutting back on sugar. So whether that's a lifestyle or health choice, or just genuinely also wanting to explore, coffee from a flavour perspective. I think probably also too, I think as an industry too, definitely when I first started, I had no idea. I remember the first day I discovered that there was Arabica and Robusta, and I was just like, oh, wow, there's like these different beans, and then you learn about all the different varieties, and then you learn about all the different processes, and then you kind of start digging deeper and deeper. So as an industry, unfortunately, we're definitely trying to catch up with consumers in terms of education, because we didn't know ourselves, and then we weren't able to to educate them. So I think as we get better educated and able to communicate with our customers, and of course they're going to want to be naturally wanting to follow an interest and taste those coffees as we're excited. So it's really nice when you get to work with, people and passionate baristas that get it. They get the business part of it, but they also get how to communicate to customers and not overwhelm them. I do find some people do feel a little bit overwhelmed with all the story information. They just, unfortunately, sometimes it's just about how much is it really good? Why should I buy it? All that kind of thing. Versus letting people, say, hey, I want to know a bit more about this coffee. what can you tell me, blah, blah, blah. But I know, yeah, when I was first started as a barista here in Australia, all the coffee was only blends. We were all using Lavazza, Vittoria, Segafredo, and it was all Italy. It was all imported from Italy. And
with
the
no
reps,
roast dates on it.
Yeah, nothing. We had no idea what was in it. The reps didn't know.
No.
And so, of course, we couldn't educate consumers accordingly. So, which is a shame because we know it's exactly the same as, I know we use the wine industry as that example, but it's an agricultural product. It's got variety. It's got terroir. It's got everything exactly the same. We just haven't taught consumers that right message. So, yeah, it is going to be hard telling a consumer this coffee is going to potentially cost you $10 a cup because it's from this producer, it's this process. They only produced 5 bags. That's why it's amazing quality, blah, 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 blah. Oh, but it's just coffee. It's just beans in a cup. Why should I, pay that price? So I think we're getting there, but we've still got a little bit of way to go, I think, with helping those drinkers turn into tasters.
Yeah. I think we've got, excuse me, I think we've got a little bit further than a little way to go, just because from what I'm seeing, people are mind fucked at the things that we're unveiling on this and unpacking through this podcast about, the things, how climate change is affecting coffee farms and how the sea market is affecting coffee farms and the result of not paying fairly for your coffee. We're really only just starting to get this information out there as an industry.
Yep.
And I think that unless we jump on this year, this is the big shift is this year. It has to be.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm definitely seeing my I don't know if it's an annoyance or a bug, but it's definitely happening. Roasters claiming to be transparent with their costings and everything, which is awesome, but they're stopping. They're stopping at a point where, and I know that if they reveal a certain cost or value, you can work out pretty quickly what their profit margin is and blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of like, yes, we're it's like, yes, we're transparent. We're paying this price back to the producer, but even that information is not correct. They're saying that they're paying this particular FOB price, but really, when you scale it right,
farm gate price. That's correct. The price you want to know.
Exactly. And really, it's heartbreaking when you find out it's only $1 a kilo, not even that. And then in US, is it $3 or less a pound or something like that? It's some really phenomenally low figure that you just that's not being communicated enough.
So here's my big problem with this. I'm a big fan about transparency. I think it's absolutely essential. I think that we need to start getting smarter and more willing to reveal what we're paying. So I don't have a gripe with transparency. I have a gripe with a form of transparency that's for the sake of transparency as opposed to the sake of unveiling the actual problem. So don't fucking tell me that you're being transparent. But your data means nothing. And if you're a consumer, just assuming that a company is clearly got integrity because they're being transparent, dig a little bit deeper. Again, don't believe the headlines that you're seeing about things. Just because somebody says that they're transparent, it doesn't mean that the farmer's getting paid properly.
Correct.
For anyone who's listening to this and doesn't understand, FOB, free on board. That's the price that it costs till it gets on board the shipping container, the boat that's carrying the shipping container is bringing it to the port where it's going to enter a country, right? But the FOB price is the farm gate price. That's the price that the farmer's getting paid at the farm gate, plus all of the other costs.
Correct.
That is from the farm gate to the ship.
Yep.
So if people are quoting a transparency model and the price that they have up there is not separating out the FOB from the farm gate price, ask some deeper questions. And in all fairness, it is really difficult to get a lot of this data.
Yes.
Let's be real. There are farmers in Ethiopia that are recording all this data on a notepad. There are other farmers in other poor countries that don't record this data on cell phones or on laptops or anything like that. Okay, we get it. But if you're exploiting, it's such a typical fucking colonial, you know the word I'm trying to say that I can never say.
Yep.
My Arabic tongue doesn't fit.
Oh, no.
All the Aussie words, even though I was born in Australia. But the colonial ways of like, oh, let's trick these people and make them think like we're trying to save the world and lift this up there when it means fucking nothing.
But the cool thing is, though, what a lot of us forget is as I know at Origin, long story short, like a lot of the producers actually have access now, better access to internet. They're on social media. They see what we're charging for our coffee.
Oh, yeah.
And that makes them, and I know, and it makes them kind of sad and mad sometimes too, because then they know what they're not getting, they're not getting back.
Do you see that? Do you hear from some of the farmers?
Yeah, so I've got a really good relationship so I do a bit of work with Capricornio Coffee in Brazil, and getting involved with one of their projects there, and like talking to the producers, and there's like a group of ladies that they work with as well. And the biggest thing they want to know is if they're going to go to all the effort to do experimental processes or really, you know, have the pressure put onto them in terms of picking up the quality and everything, and then they want to know then they're going to get paid appropriately for that coffee.
What a novel concept, hey?
Yeah, and that was exactly, and that was probably definitely last year working with them, and you can just see that they get it, they understand it, they will do the hard yakka, 100%.
But they don't want to be taken advantage of.
Correct. Yeah, and they're getting stronger and they're getting more confident in getting that message back to us. Yeah, 100%. And that's what I love about companies that like Capricornio that they're working with, that they help educate them to know what to do. They Q grade all their own samples. That's amazing. Wow. And then they understand then how to then prepare, get them ready, and then Capricornio take on the risk for them and help them then, you know, get their coffees out. So, but I love that they're really strong with their message. Like,
there's a correlation. We're going to do the hard
yakka. Yeah.
Oh, you're right. If they're going to do the hard yakka, for anyone who doesn't speak Australian, that means hard work.
Sorry.
No, hey, this is an international podcast.
Yeah.
For people who are going to do the hard yakka, why is it so difficult for us to accept that they should get paid? And there's a correlation there with the way that we treat our baristas and the way that we treat our roasters. Like at the end of the day, these are the people who are on the front lines doing the work. I'm not saying give them everything. What I am saying is find a way to create a business model that rewards everybody, including you as the business owner. Stop trying to rip people off. These people at the farms, it's infuriating after the things that I've learned on this podcast. I'm so fucking lucky to have this podcast and be able to talk to people directly who are cutting their trees down on their farms because I can't sell it on the commodity market for less than what it's costing me to grow them.
And even in the internal market. Yeah.
I'm better off putting macadamia trees up.
Yeah.
The wonderful the Vizcaíno brothers from Two Birds Coffee were on the podcast, and they said to us, our uncle sent us a photo yesterday of his farmers that were on the people who work for him on his farm were macheteing down the trees, and he sent them a photo saying, this is how we're going to do coffee farming from now on the sea market, getting rid of it.
Wow. Because I think that definitely struck me probably again more so last year when I was visiting Brazil and seeing that, the farms are actually really only sometimes 60% coffee, 40% like citrus and other corn. And they've got, and sugar as well. Actually, it's more so in Brazil, like they've got the companies coming along to farmers saying, if you take out your coffee, we'll pay you to use your land to grow sugar. And of course they're going to take it.
And you know, Brazil's one of those countries that's not not hit as hard by the C market as most other countries. From, if I've understood the things that I've been taught on this podcast correctly, a lot of the coffee farming in Brazil is quite mechanized, so it's a lot cheaper for them to produce coffee
in some areas. Yeah.
And so, because it's cheaper for them to produce coffee, if the C market drops to $1 and it's costing them 80 cents to create a pound of coffee, they're still winning at $1.
Yeah.
You know, but that's not the case in pretty much everywhere else.
Yeah,
which is crazy. When did you start your own business?
Yes, so back to that. So yes, I did my time in the US and had lots of fun this year getting involved in. Got a chance to compete at USBC, so I did the barista competitions again in New York, and that were the days when it was NERBC and all the different regions, so north, south, east, west, and so got in the top 6. So you get automatic entry into USBC, and it was actually in Boston, so it's going to be really cool going back to Boston in April. A few memories there, but I'll never forget when I was competing, and it's a massive space. It's just like WBC size, and this little voice in my head just kind of went, do you realize where you are? Like, this is just full on. And I just lost it. I just couldn't hear anything. And I just went, okay, so I got really nervous, but anyway, it was really fun. And then
us Australians, we have this whole little brother syndrome with America.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So then, then headed back to Australia pretty much the same time as all the WBC was on in Melbourne. So landed in Melbourne, and then I was roasting with Proud Mary for a little bit, did a bit of then some roasting with Axel Coffee. And then this kind of like sort of feeling of, I was kind of like, I had a feeling I'd hit a bit of a ceiling with my production roasting. And I felt with my range of experience on commercial and specialty equipment, and with my experience in both US and Australia, I went, I really want to get back into training, and I saw an opportunity and a niche to do that with roasting. So I started doing my roasting course. It's like 4 years ago now. So then started doing a monthly roasting course to sort of like just give people a chance to touch a machine and to sort of satisfy that process of, so this is what roasting's about. And I kind of call myself the fairy godmother sometimes of roasting, where
bless your heart, Anne.
I'm really passionate about the industry in the sense that I want people to treat it as it is production and manufacturing.
Yes.
It's not this, romantic, magical fairy place where we see the pictures. And I kid you not, I had someone come into the class and say, but isn't it just about standing around smelling the coffee? And I just went, like in the pictures, like seriously, they weren't joking.
Maybe in your dreams, buddy.
They weren't joking. And I was like,
worked a fucking day in your life?
Correct. And I was just like, no, it's so much more than. And so I'm really passionate about giving people a very real taste of the roasting process. And so I don't sugarcoat it. I'm very firm but professional about it. The idea is this is going to sound really weird, respectfully put them in a situation where they get a taste of everything from as you would as a production roaster. So there is a little bit of, element. They do feel a bit overwhelmed initially. But I'm always talking through that. I'm always recognizing what it is that they're overwhelmed with. And it's always the decision-making, the data collection. You've got this sense of, because everything's happening at once, you've got moving parts, you've got moving roasters to manage, you've got data applications ticking away with numbers and all that kind of stuff. And let alone
trying not to start a fire.
Yep, pretty much. As well as owning up to, I think, the flavors that you want to produce. And that's the biggest thing too, is that as roasters, we often forget we're in the business of flavor. And that's the ultimate goal of roasting, is to create something to be tasted. So it does break my heart when I hear someone say, I don't taste my coffee, I don't have time, or I don't, just basically not tasting enough.
What do you say to that, Anne? I mean, that blows my mind that somebody.
It does.
It doesn't surprise me, but it constantly blows my mind when, especially things like even baristas, they never taste their espresso.
I think the art of tasting from baristas has definitely slipped a little bit. Definitely. There's a little bit too much emphasis. Look,
I don't believe it. What, all the tattoos and the Amish hats and the beards and all of the coolness? The tasting has gone away, you think?
Yeah. But yeah, it's really no, it's all good. It's really hard with especially with roasting, because people get so fixated with the equipment. And you actually be not surprised the amount of people that try and set up a roastery and they forget about having enough capital to buy green bean, and then it's kind of like, well, it's kind of the most important thing thing of it. But yeah, with the tasting, you just got to remind them that that's the whole purpose of what you're doing. And if you can't communicate to somebody why they should buy your product, if you can't even describe the flavor of your own product, then why should I invest, in your business and your brand? So it's really important that, you go through those motions. And then the business perspective, I'm very passionate about people getting into roasting, understanding how to cost what they're roasting, and understand their product portfolio in terms of you've got those products that you can then produce at a high volume that will help you, get your capital in place so that you can buy then the more expensive coffees and showcase them, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so the roasting course very much evolved about giving people more of that practical hands-on experience, but also kind of showing them that roasting's not something to be messed with in the sense of it's not this fluffy romantic little bubble. It's a proper industry, and we need to get that message out a lot more clearly. There's definitely better access. I have to, say that when we all first started roasting, we're all self-taught to an extent.
And we all pretended what we like. By we, I mean coffee professionals that are like has been in it as long as you and I have.
Yeah.
In the beginning, we all pretended to know what the fuck we were talking about.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, even as a barista, like you're doing all these techniques, and you're tapping the tamper on the side of the porter filter.
I know what the fuck I'm doing.
And I think and I have to almost thank the roasting course, because it's taught me also. It's really great because you get to hear all the questions and you learn from those questions then how to better communicate what people are wanting to find out in terms of information. So it makes you then search for way, and I love trying to be able to offer a solution and the whys and the hows. And I think that's then when if someone says, well, why is my coffee tasting a certain way? And then, from experience then, how to troubleshoot that and show them how to work through that. And definitely that kind of information was never really available much, when we all first started. So we're all kind of just fumbling our way, and we're learning from the person that's teaching us. So you're kind of at, their, whatever they know, only you can know. And then if you can then get yourself in a nice situation where you can just do things over and over again, and then cup and taste and learn from experimenting and go from there. But there's definitely, obviously, yes, 100% better access now to knowledge and information, and it's definitely easier to go and buy a roaster and set yourself up and go for it from there. So once a month, and there's always a range of experience in the class. Like I've had people that have had roasting companies for 20 years come through, because they're kind of I just want to know, how am I going, and am I on the right track, or have I been on the right track, and if not, what can I do to potentially improve something, and kind of go from there. Yeah.
So you do your classes once a month?
Yes. Yeah. And I like to keep them nice and focused, like nice small groups. I used to have 6 people, but now I only do 4, because I really like the dynamic of people working in pairs, because then they've got their roasting buddy and they can bounce off each other when they're doing the roasting exercise. So we get the same coffee and we roast it 3 different ways. So we'll do a sample roast, a filter, and an espresso, and talk through those 3 different approaches. And of course, along the way, it brings up, everything in terms of, equipment, approaches, applications, why, and then taking them through because that can then lead to the business side in terms of, well, how do they go through talking to a trader, purchasing a coffee, understanding costing, understanding blending's always a massive question. That can be a course, in its own right.
And it should be a course unto itself.
It should be a course. I agree, because to me, I'm also really passionate about branding, in terms of people knowing what that means. And I see blending as a very big brand exercise because it has to tick so many boxes. It's not just chucking some beans together and going, what do you think? It's like, well, my first question will be, how much does it cost? And then does it fit into where you need it to go? And then in terms of how are you then keeping your products stable? Is there consistency? And yeah, it just brings up so many interesting, things.
Do you mind if I ask you some dumb, I've never roasted coffee before questions?
Yep.
About blending?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, sure.
So when it comes to creating a blend, I've always been fascinated about that, and I don't think enough people do it well. And the reason I say that is because if I go into a cafe and I'll order the blend,
yep.
I'll usually order it as a long black and as a milk drink, and I'm usually with oat milk or something like that, which is sacrilegious anyway. But the reason I'm going in there to do that is because I want to understand what the branding is, like how much thought they've put into how this blend's going to taste all round.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty much 100% of the time, it only tastes good as either milk-based or black.
Yep.
You know, it either gets, if 100% of the time, if it tastes good as a long black or Americano, however you want to say it, it typically gets completely lost in the milk-based drink. Or if it tastes good with milk, it's far too overpowering. Like you can't separate anything out as in the black. So how do you approach that?
So I think it's really interesting with the industry and whether it's the cafe or the roasters making the decisions. But here in Australia at the moment, a lot of us will default to a single origin for the black coffees, and then we'll have a blend for the milk-based. And I think it's a lot of us wanting to give customers a nice experience with origin from that espresso black experience. And I actually kind of like going back to our US conversation about
it's
coffee.
It's going to happen constantly throughout this conversation.
It just reminded me why, just really quickly in terms of the one thing I think the US does really well in terms of consumer education is about origin, because you've got the ability with the batch brews to showcase the origin. So you do walk in and see, okay, today's batch brew is Colombia or it's, Sumatra, Guatemala. But here in Australia, it's always been about brands and blends. Mm-hmm. And so we've never been taught a very good lesson about origin. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why here we've had to work a little bit harder to get customers to understand, yes, there is different varieties, different processes, different origins. And a way to do that is to default to a single origin for an espresso and a long black. So we get a lot of interest now in the cafes. People will actually specifically look for what's the single origin and can they enjoy that as a black coffee. And then we are slightly roasting the single origin and the blend slightly differently. So I would develop my milk-based a little bit deeper for that cut through with the milks.
The thing is, though, I find that that's unfair to the consumer, because we're typically in Australia, when we're doing that, we're charging the consumer more for the single origin, right?
Oh, I think it depends on the company.
Pretty much everywhere I've worked has charged 50 cents more, $1 more for an espresso in the single origin than in the blend. And so I'm specifically going in there only because over the last few years, I've been trying to educate myself on the way that different companies approach blending.
Yep. So, because then I went, oh shit, I'm talking about blends here. So on the blend side of things, then from why would a company then use a certain combination of beans? And definitely, hopefully, working with, seasonality. Like, so you'll see, I think that's where companies like, I think that's where Proud Mary have done a really good job, where teaching their consumers, when you see a particular name like blend come through, whether it's Angel Wings or Ghost Rider or whatever it is, that there's been a change in the seasonality of the beans. And I think they got a chance to teach their customers that really good lesson. But in general, though, like if it's depending on the flavors, the way it's been roasted and developed. I'm also seeing the extraction, preference in the cafe. Like I know in Australia we went through a really horrendous double res kind of phase. We've all done it, and there's still companies still
the
doing
blacker
it.
The better, right?
Yeah, and I'm quite passionate about having even for the milk based, a really solid extraction, but still from, I call them split shots, but just a single shot. Yeah. But that's only because the selection of the beans and the roasting will help support that. And then along with that blend combination, again, working with quite a few companies, I'll always question them all, along with costing everything, what's the premise for that blend? And I had a client recently where the brief was it had to taste like a Kit Kat in milk. So it was really cool. So it was like, it was just like, so creamy, milk chocolate, vanilla, hazelnut, wafery.
Kit Kat?
Yeah, exactly. So for me, helping them put together the blend, it was really awesome going through the selection process. And then it brings up again the whole combination of, well, what time of year is it? Are those beans available? Can we secure a certain amount? So roasters, hopefully, their blends would be also influenced by how much coffee they can afford to future contract and draw down on, no doubt the cost of it, and all that kind of stuff. So, but we don't know that as a consumer. So we're just seeing the information on the boards and the bags and the combinations and everything. And if it's not quite cutting through in flavour in the milk, then I would just question the roasting approach, and even potentially the combination of the beans. Like, it always fascinates me seeing a high percentage of, pardon me, Ethiopians in a blend. It just makes me wonder, how can you afford, that, pardon me, particular
Please don't check on my podcast.
Sorry.
No, cough it out.
But
breathe.
But it's a very, strong flavours, and yeah, it just brings up all these, questions about, how did they do that? Why did they do that? Yeah.
Can you typically taste all that stuff? Are you someone who, for an analogy, I can't listen to music anymore and enjoy it because, look, all I'm listening for is, I wonder what microphone they used. I wonder what studio they recorded that. I wonder, was it recorded in their bedroom? Was it, was it all automated? All that kind of stuff, right? So I can't listen to music and enjoy it anymore. If I want to enjoy music, I've just got to write a song and play it myself. Do you have the same thing with regards to coffee? Do you go in there and are you constantly thinking about, well, I wonder X, Y, Z about the roast process?
Sometimes I'm actually pretty good. Like sometimes if I go to a cafe, people kind of go, oh, is she going to sit there and analyze everything and, really pick at the coffee? But no, I'm always, I just want to, like everybody else, I just want to enjoy a nice cup of coffee. I am very passionate about balance and body and sweetness, regardless of whether it's a light roast or a dark roast. And I want to enjoy a coffee from, top to bottom, from hot to cold. So if I do get halfway through a coffee and it starts to get a little bit skewy and sour and really disconnected and disjointed, I'm naturally just going to go, oh, okay, that's not quite hitting the mark.
Then the analyst starts to come out of you.
Maybe a little bit, yeah. And I would just kind of go, that's a shame that bean didn't get, expressed
cooked
or roasted in a way. Yeah.
I've learned enough about roast. I've been to enough of Scott Rayo's roast classes to know about a whole bunch of that kind of stuff. It's amazing what you learn by osmosis.
Yes.
Where with Elixir, it really does reveal so much about the roast profile. Yes. And so even though I've never roasted anything, I could speak to a roast curve, and I know when a coffee's crashed without even seeing the roast curve if I'm tasting it through Elixir. Mm-hmm. And these are different things that I have only been able to grasp because of this beverage. Like I can't taste the bakeness in a cup of brewed coffee, but I can taste it in Elixir because it's so revealing. There's just different ways that we all get to experience it all.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey,
so did I answer your? I was going to say, did I answer your blend question? I don't. Not sure if I.
No.
I kind of I went like around a little bit.
No, all good. It's I feel like when I come to Australia next, probably probably be around Melbourne in November or something. But I would love to sit down and have a chat with you about blends, because I don't know that enough people are focusing on how important they are. And I think that, my experience of it has been anyway that very rarely are people nailing it as a drink that they should be serving as both black and white. I almost feel like if you're going to be doing it well, and this is just my for whatever the fuck you want opinion to anyone who's going to contact me and say, you
can't say anything.
It's not fair of you to suggest that. Most businesses can't afford it, blah, blah, blah. Hey, I get it. I'm not saying that everyone should be doing this. What I am saying is that we should be questioning a lot of the things that we're offering. Like, we offer a blend and serve it black and with milk. If the blend doesn't taste any good with milk, should we be serving it with milk? But if the blend doesn't taste any good black, should we maybe have a second blend that we use for black coffees, or serve a single origin as a black coffee? Yeah. And is it fair to penalise our customers because we want to do that?
Yeah. I think probably just on that too, it does come to mind, probably the biggest thing I've then seen from when I first started to now is cafe setups in terms of equipment. And it's so, I don't know how cafe owners set up nowadays with the cost of equipment. Like, you've got cars sitting on benches now. Like when we first started, I remember freaking out that a machine was $5,000. It was like, oh my God, it was like, the Lama Zocco FB70, blah, 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 blah. And like, it's this price. And now they're 25 to 30,000 and more. How does the cafe owner then have the cost of that? And then all these, if they need to have more grinders in place, and then that equipment cost has got to add up for them as well. So I kind of think of it as the setup cost also influencing that product choice and their ability to offer that range of, a blend for milk, a blend for black, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
It seems to be a self-perpetuating black hole. It's one of those things that, the toys are so much fun. And I've said it before on this podcast, and I will keep saying it till the cows come home. Buy what you need to buy. Have a couple of shiny things that make it exciting for the customers to see, and the barista's excited about working for you. But all that extra capital that you don't have to spend on equipment, keep it and spend it on marketing, so that you can teach your customers about what you're doing and bring more customers to the shop, so that you can have a longer trajectory with regards to how long you're going to be in business.
I mean, the ultimate goal of business is to create the ultimate lifestyle. Yeah, exactly.
You want to just stay in business for as long as you want to fucking be in business.
Yeah.
With regards to that also, we did a cost breakdown analysis at the Map It Forward Sydney and Melbourne tour events. You were there for one of the days. I think you were there for the roaster day, weren't you?
Yeah.
And so we did a cost breakdown analysis of a bag of coffee, and we did a cost breakdown analysis for a cup of coffee. And we did that on the cafe owners day, and we did that on the baristas day. And people were shocked. We had an accountant break it down for us. Yeah. And I don't know if you saw the numbers for the cup of coffee in
No, we didn't.
Do you want to take a guess at what kind of profit you're looking at for a latte? So it's an 8-ounce latte. Where the coffee costs $26 a kilo. And the coffee costs $30 a kilo. An 8-ounce latte, no sugar. How much do you think the profit
was that dine-in or takeaway, or does it matter?
It was a takeaway coffee.
Takeaway coffee. Oh goodness. So by the time you factor in your espresso shot, your milk, your cup.
We were selling it for $3.50.
Selling it for $3.50.
So an 8-ounce latte, which is the average price of a latte, a $3.50 latte where the coffee was $30 a kilo. What kind of pricing do you think? How much profit do you think you make?
I was going to say with coffee at $30 a kilo, probably not that much. Like, I reckon 50 cents, $1, if that.
17 cents.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
If if you take into consideration, you know, the $1 million fit outs that are happening, all the equipment that's sitting on the benches and the lease costs for all of that, et cetera, 17 cents.
Yeah.
And the reason we wanted to not only present that at the Cafe Owners Day, but at the Baristas Day was because every time a barista's handing out a free coffee, not only are you losing the 17 cents profit, but it's another, you know, 5 at least. My math's really bad right now. But it's a whole bunch of coffees more after that that you're going to need just to make up the cost.
Yeah. And also too with and not to hang on baristas, but also being mindful about when they're dialing in their coffees. Unfortunately, I've seen a whole kilo just get used to try and get that right shot. And not tasting their way through it and just using numbers. And yeah, it's really interesting, the whole where all that random wastage can go. And all of a sudden, as a business owner, you're kind of going, yeah, where's my profit going? Why I'm thinking I'm bringing in products at this price and I'm selling it at this price, but it's not quite matching up.
Well, it's that famous thing. Like, I remember coming up through my career as a barista, you'd turn up to different places and trial there to see if you wanted to work there, and they wanted you to work there. And, you know, you'd get these owners that were like, you're not allowed to dial in the morning because that's a waste of coffee. And I want to make sure that I get 100 shots per bag.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Do you remember those days where like, and the waste,
the click, the click dose.
Oh yeah. And you know, you weren't allowed to waste a shot at all.
Yeah.
If it channeled, the customer's not going to know about it. And it's like, I'm not that kind of barista. I need for them to have the quality of the coffee that they are paying for. But back then were the days when a cup of coffee was costing and
it was less than $2. Yep.
Oh, well, it costs less than $2, but the cost of goods was like 40 cents to make a cup of coffee.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
You know, it's a whole different ballgame back then. There's not the money in coffee that people are thinking that there is these days. Honestly, I spend so much of my consulting time trying to convince people not to open cafes now.
Yep.
A lot of my mission is the idea that we want people to open cafes, but we want the right people to be opening cafes, and the right people and roasteries.
It's exactly right. You want the right people. Yeah, exactly.
And for anyone listening who's like, well, look at this self-entitled bitch talking about all this stuff, it's like, listen, you may be the right person that we're talking about, but the way that I define the right person is you have an understanding of what your brand intention is. You've defined the culture for your staff and for your customers. You know what your buying philosophy is. You know what your selling philosophy is. You understand that you are dealing with an agricultural product, but you are also dealing with a public that don't quite understand the importance of the agriculture behind the product that you're producing. And if you are that person that understands all of that things, that's only step one. Step two is, do you understand about raising capital? Do you understand
people
about
management?
All of it, all the other stuff that comes with it. So if you are somebody that does understand all of that, please tell me how I can help you, because the more of you that we have coming into this industry and the more of you that we have establishing these businesses, the less heartbreak those of us who get contacted by people who shouldn't be doing it, the less of that we're going to experience, because they're going to the number of people who open cafes and close them within 6 months is just heartbreaking.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And roasteries, these people who are shelling out 60 grand on a fucking roaster when they've never roasted before.
Yep. And it's starting to happen a little bit here in Melbourne. You're starting to see a few of those people that started with really good intention, but unfortunately they've had to either sell or close down. Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking. They're losing their life savings on this shit.
Yep. And if you're just not being sensible, again, it just coming back to that business perspective, And I think it's a little bit of a push and pull sometimes with roasting maybe at the moment, with the whole focus on specialty being the only way. But specialty is just not sustainable in some elements of your business. So there's nothing wrong with using, commercial grade coffee. There's nothing wrong with, you've just got to know where to direct those coffees correctly into your portfolio so you can have a solid business, so you can then showcase your wonderful specialty coffees when you want to. But if you're being too hard and fast on certain things, you just financially can't sustain a really healthy business.
So when you say that there's nothing wrong with using commercial grade coffees, I want to clarify that by saying, you're saying, go ahead. What do you mean by that? There's nothing wrong with using commercial grade coffees.
Some people think they have to only use specialty coffee. So they think it has to be.
What do you mean by specialty?
80 points and above. Yep. And also from a grade perspective as well, from the green grade. So people get it in their head. They go, oh, it's a, I only want to use 85 point, coffee, blah, 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 blah. But to them, as straight away, I'm just like, that's got to be anywhere between, it could be $10, $15, $20 a kilo green before you even start putting any of your profit margin and all of your costings on top. So then as a business, if you're not selling that appropriately, there's no way you're going to be able to then get enough capital to be able to continue buying coffee, at that price to help support that specialty thirst of it has to only be specialty. And I've definitely seen roasters be very, very firm on it has to be this particular grade. But if you're just not managing your costings properly, you just can't do it. And so people think it's bad or wrong to use something, in that sort of commercial zone if it's a 78 or a 79. Like, the only reason they've kind of sometimes landed in that point is because they might have a few, from the green perspective, they may have a few extra blacks and stuff that came through in the green grading. That is the stuff that you will taste, and that's no doubt why it falls into that points category. But generally those coffees are awesome. I think P&G coffees are a really good example. Awesome body, fruit, sweetness. They do just tend to sometimes come through with a few of those primary defects that were made to then knock it down into that category. But there's nothing wrong with, sometimes they'll often outcup some of those rated higher coffees. And I think it's just being a bit more sensible and savvy about your bean selection and not being too fixated on it has to be this point score, it has to be this certain grade. Again, just about.
And it's important for anyone that's listening. Anne is not saying buy coffees and don't pay a fair price for them.
Oh, no, definitely not. No.
Exactly. So if you're
definitely trying to think about more from
a permission to do that. No, Anne is a massive advocate, like all of us are paying a fair price.
100%.
Farmgate and FOB.
Yeah, but then also you've got to look after yourself from your business perspective as well. Yeah. 100%.
What's your take on brands who let me say first, I'm somebody who believes that if you've gone to the effort to be very clear about what your branding is and you have defined your concept, it's a really important step in becoming a roaster because it will really determine what you get away with selling and what you won't get away with selling. So if you've defined your brand as, I'm going to sell coffee to corporate professionals who love pretending that they know how to make coffee at home and who will buy 90 plus coffees, which is great. You're never going to be roasting 10 ton of that a week. That market doesn't exist. Versus people saying, do you have a horse in the house?
No, the garbage truck's out the front. Sorry. Can you hear the bins banging? Wow.
Like it sounds like there's a horse.
No. Just the truck's out the front. Oh, that's so funny.
Sorry.
So good. Where's the microphone on this one?
The look on your face was like, what? Why does she mean is there a horse in the house? So that versus the people who are like, I'm going to tell my consumers that we're doing specialty coffee, because specialty coffee is such a wide, vast term these days. And I'm going to buy commodity coffee that I, I'm paying, $18 a kilo for roasted.
Yep.
What's your take on those different models and approaches as a roasting brand?
Because it's interesting. So I guess I'll be kind of getting at potentially a company wanting to dip its toe into saying that it also has access to specialty coffee and it's selling specialty, but really in order for it to succeed, it does make its bread and butter from purchasing cheaper coffees and selling them at a particular, price and then profit margin, but
more so it's
not being upfront.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's more so that it's the idea that we're going to tell people we're selling specialty, but what we mean by specialty is that you get really beautiful cups to drink your very average coffee in, and because we know that people taste with their eyes a lot of the time, we'll just pay baristas to do really beautiful latte art in there.
Correct. Yeah.
And you've got beautiful cups, but what we're doing is we're not paying a fair price for our coffee, and we're telling you we're putting specialty coffee in there, but it's not. Like, what's your take on that? Because I know it happens a lot.
It's definitely not okay, because and I think that's where it's really screwing up with the intention of, I guess, what specialty is meant to be. It is a particular. I mean, to me, and I know we sort of chatted about this on the Roasters Day, and I think some of us were trying to get across, I think, like what Ben Bicknell was trying to say, and even I think I tried to say, but I didn't say it very well, was that to me, it starts from the green grading. If it's being green graded already and it's in that specialty realm, then technically it should then, from the scoring perspective, then naturally start being in that 80 point and above, kind of range. So where does it get skewed? Definitely people's understanding on how to score appropriately. But for me, it's just very clear cut. If it's not specialty from a green perspective, there's no way for me that it can cross into, you can't tell me that something that's got full blacks and sours and broken, chipped and cut beans and sticks and stones, that can then go on to score above 80 points. To me, that's just not possible.
But the idea of specialty has become such a clouded. Well, it's become such a clouded thing, isn't it? Right.
Yes.
So you can have a beautiful fit out. You can have gorgeous branding on the coffee bags.
Yeah.
You can be, what's the term for it? Is it white bagging that you like contract roasting or toll roasting?
Yeah.
You know, where they give you.
You've got your own packaging and your own.
And you get someone to. And because the packaging is gorgeous.
Yeah, and that's a shame, because then again, it's the lesson to the consumer about, what specialty could mean to them and to that company. It's not really reflecting the appropriateness of specialty being about, again, coming back to transparency and relationships and, that full circle relationship back to the producer in terms of helping them be better educated about the level of quality that we expect, so they can then give that to us and we can then showcase that to our customers. So it's a shame if that's happening with larger companies or companies I shouldn't say that, companies that are wanting to do that little bit of smoke and mirrors kind of approach of, we've got this specialty coffee, but technically the product going in is not.
Oh, look, a lot of them are doing things like, and it does tend to be the larger companies because they can get away with it a lot of the time, but it definitely is one of those things of, we're a specialty coffee brand. We're a specialty coffee roaster. And then what goes into the bag is not specialty coffee, because the general public doesn't understand the scoring system.
No.
They don't care about the scoring system.
No.
Starbucks buys specialty coffee.
Yes.
All of Starbucks coffee is technically specialty grade coffee. And so, the public doesn't care about that. And in a climate where we are starting to penny pinch as an industry because the market's so saturated.
Yep.
Mark Dundon says it really great. He's like, he's even turned this into a hashtag. He says it's a race to the bottom now.
Yeah.
And so if people can keep paying the expensive dollars for the branding and the expensive money on the expensive fit outs in cafes and create the illusion of specialty, and then the actual product that goes in the bag, it still just looks like brown roasted beans. How the fuck would the public know the difference? Most of them are drinkers, to use your term, versus tasters.
Versus tasters, yeah. Yep. I mean, because my roaster brain went, well, you'd see the Quakers in the beans, so
how many of them care?
Yeah,
how many know?
Exactly. Yeah.
And honestly, the number of roasters that send me coffee to test for Elixir, and they have no fucking idea the quantity of Quakers that are in there, the ratio of Quakers to not Quakers in there. Like, I'm constant.
And even
it's fucking phenomenal. I sit there, and the first thing I do when I get a brand new coffee, I empty the bag onto a whiteboard and I start sorting through them.
Yep.
And I want to just first of all give a visual to see, like, has this person sent me a reasonable coffee? Have they sent me a coffee that they know that whatever I'm about to fucking do with it, it's a good coffee? We say to them, send us your best coffee. Yep. By best coffee, I don't mean the coffee that cost you the most expensive. I want you to send me your best coffee, the one that you think roasts the best. I'm going to have a look at it first. I want to see if there's any tipping. I want to see if there's any scorching. I want to see if there's any defects in the beans. Like, that tells me more about you as a roaster than anything else.
Yep.
Clearly, you know that I know a little bit about what I'm talking about. Hey, let's pretend I'm a dum-dum. But I'm not that much of a dum-dum that I can't open a bag and see that, almost 10% of the beans are Quakers. 10% is an astronomical number of Quakers.
Yeah.
Astronomical.
Yep.
And if the roaster can't see that, and what hope do we? The public doesn't give any fucks. You know what I'm saying?
I guess though, is it that whole case of too where, if they like your product, they'll keep coming back, but if they don't like the taste of it, then of course they won't buy it. And you would hope then that if you are using a lower grade coffee, that the flavor of that would pretty much hopefully sort out whether people would, continue to buy it and support it and recognize, what, it actually doesn't taste that great. And they're letting their taste buds rule their decision. You would hope that would, because technically if it is a lower grade coffee, it would then be reflected in the flavor.
So here's my thing with that. Have you ever, when you were a barista, well, you were a barista a long time ago, but, I remember the last job I had in Australia as a barista, you'd get, and it was in Bondi. So this was a really right up there. It was at Harry's Bondi.
Yep. Oh, cool. Yep.
Yeah. So I was there for the last year. I was living in year and a half-ish. I was working in Australia, and Noah and I were there at the same time. Shout out to Noah.
Yeah.
And, the number you get these people come in every now and then and say, I'm sorry, you don't make very good coffee. And Noah's face every time someone would say that to us was hilarious. But, for me, that's an opportunity to kind of pry a little deeper, and you'd say, oh, so where do you typically, none of my regulars had that opinion. Otherwise, they'd not be my regulars, right?
Yep.
So you'd go and you'd start asking them questions. Oh, that's really interesting that you think that. Where do you typically drink your coffee? Or what brand of coffee do you typically drink? And they'd be like, the best. I drink Victoria coffee. So immediately you're going to, you have your answer in that right there, how do you normally drink your coffee? Espresso, 2 sugars. Okay, so you even the sugar that we had panela.
Yep.
So, their espresso, 2 sugars. There's usually white sugar. It's sharp and super like crazy sweet, and Victoria coffee, super, super, super dark, right? They come to Harry's and we're using Proud Mary's coffee.
Oh God.
You don't make very good. Oh, right. You don't make very good coffee. Right. So I think that us as business owners or as roasters or whatever it is, like when we're expecting that the public can taste the difference, they can taste the difference relative to what their reference point is.
Yeah.
And I think that works in favor of these people who are trying to do this race down to the bottom, because the majority of the public doesn't know. And if I put it in a pretty bag, we live in a time.
Oh, it's
and the
all
headline
about pretty,
is everything.
Oh yeah, 100%.
You know,
100%.
These people are spending so much money on packaging. And so to make the packaging more affordable, they spend less on the coffee.
Yeah.
Well, it's a fascinating time to be observing business ownership in our industry, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Do a lot of the people that you work with, by people I mean roasters, a lot of the roasters that you're working with are you noticing that there's more of a focus on branding or skill with regards to roasting?
Probably I'll probably have to say initially skill, because I'm more on that training and education kind of side of it. I only every now and then kind of like dabble and dip my toe into part of their branding part of it. Generally, luckily, a lot of the people I've worked with have had a pretty good idea about what kind of brand they want to have, and because of where they might be. Like in particular, like in regional, there's a few roasters in the regional areas that they'll draw on inspiration from their community and name themselves after their community, and they've got that whole kind of connection there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really lovely. I mean, I've got like a guy, he's got a loring in his garage in Arthur's Creek. Like, it's amazing.
No way.
Yeah, it's amazing. And he's awesome. He's very conscious about like the coffees that he wants to buy and serve. And it's all about supporting his his community. Of course he wants to grow and keep going, but it's very much about that community focus as well. And but yeah, no, definitely helping them understand and getting their skill on track first, so it does then allow them to continue to focus on their branding side. I think yeah, in hindsight, I think I've been pretty lucky in seeing that with the clients that I've dealt with. They've all had a pretty good idea about their brand.
Yeah, wow. I want to go back to something you were talking about with regards to volume. And this is something that before we got on this call, I did an Instagram stories post saying that you didn't know we were going to talk about this, but I wanted to talk about it with you because, one, you're an intelligent human, and you're welcome. And you've seen a bunch of shit in the world. So I want to have this conversation with you. And we were talking about volume before. And it leads me into wanting to talk about companies that are big. So I want to talk about Nestle for a second. Am I right in saying that in Australia we say Nestles?
Oh, no, I've always said Nestle.
Have you? I think
definitely.
You said Nestles. Maybe that's because I grew up out west in Sydney.
Don't know. I've always known it as Nestle.
God, I missed that.
Yeah.
Fuck, I missed I don't hear anyone say, dunno. God, I missed that. Anyway. That was so nice to hear. So the reason I want to talk about this is because the episode of the podcast before you last week was Alex. I can't remember how to say his last name, Rabenovic, something like that. So he works in ideation and concept generation for Nestle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the way that he and I got connected was because do you know what ideation is?
No.
So ideation is so they generate concepts, but they also come up with ideas. That's where ideation comes from. So they're the group within Nestle that helps come up with ideas for different products and different parts of their brands and packaging and all that kind of stuff. So he's the coffee ideation guy for Nestle in Switzerland.
Yeah.
And so he contacted me. He did not contact me. He put an order in for Elixir through our website.
And you saw
and the address, someone passed it on to me and said, hey, what do you want us to do about this? It's an international order going to Switzerland and it's for Nestle. And so I reached out to him just to say, so, like when we launched our subscription, Starbucks was one of the first subscribers to the Elixir subscription. Yeah. Right. So it's not that I'm unaware that we're being watched by the bigger companies.
Yes. Yeah.
For good reason. It's the first innovative bottled coffee beverage in decades. Like it's a real different, it doesn't taste like anything else kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm flattered, but not surprised. This has been, we're into our 4th year now. So people aren't taking notice, then we're not doing our job right. And so I reached out to him and just said, so listen, I was wondering why Nestle was wanting to purchase some Elixir. And, he's like, look, I'm responsible for ideation. And I didn't know what that was. So, he taught me what ideation was. I didn't even know that job was a real thing. Like, it just sounds like such a fucking cool thing. And in my next life, I might want to come back and do something like that. And Elixir was on the top of his list of beverages to try because he knew it existed, et cetera, et cetera. And so when I said to him, like, why is Nestle interested in creating a version of Elixir?
Similar.
Right. And as a business owner, you want to know that. And he said, look, let me be really real with you, Lee. In order for us to create a version of Elixir or to make Elixir, let's say we bought the company off you and we wanted to make it, I'm not quite sure you understand the volume of that we would need to be able to fulfill per day. And I'm like, no, I don't. And he said, we sell 6,000 cups of coffee per second.
My goodness.
We would need to be able to fulfill an industry that roasted about 100,000 kilos a day. Right?
Yep.
So I'm like, okay, awesome. You can have some Elixir. That's not a problem. So it brings me to the part of that I really want to talk about with you. It's this idea that people are pretty outraged with me that I had somebody on the podcast from Nestle, because how dare you bring on somebody onto the podcast and have a conversation with somebody from a company that's so evil. And, I have a lot of opinions about that statement, only because, first of all, are you fucking kidding me? Have you people met me? Like, I'm really not a horrible person. Like, I just don't know.
It was a genuine, like, hey, is my product about to be copied, and can I just, talk to someone about this? And
well, he's a cool guy. Like,
yeah, exactly.
He has a cool job.
Yeah,
Ideation
exactly.
Sounds like, and Map Forward is about career and business development.
Yeah,
that's what
exactly.
The company's about. This podcast is just about talking to interesting, cool people. But his job was interesting.
Yeah, very.
I don't know that there's a lot of people out there that knew that this existed. And he was this really great, genuine guy who had managed cafes in the Nordic cafes for years.
Yep.
the same as pretty much everyone else that listens to this podcast, and he's ended up working for a massive corporate. Now, you know, the volumes that these kinds of companies buy of coffee, we can't comprehend.
Would be astronomical. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Well, we just can't, like, okay, we think that when I hear that a company's doing 50 ton a week, I'm like, holy motherfucker, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
These people are doing double that in a day.
Yep.
No. Yeah.
Their roasting facility, I couldn't even imagine what size roasters they're using.
Right. And so, like, I'm not saying that Nestle's an evil company. I'm not saying it isn't an evil company. But for the love of fuck, please stop assuming that every single person that works for these companies
is, yep.
It's not okay.
Yeah, just because they're large doesn't. And I think what the thought process was because of some potential background, a sort of, what was it? Things that Nestle may have done or been involved in. And I guess that's
and that kind of thing. You go ahead.
Yeah, but I guess that's, like you said, how does that then connect to hanging that on that gentleman just because of his connection with the company? I guess it sort of reminds me of, I've got a friend that works for I think it's Green Mountain in Vermont, and that's another example of all the K-cups and the size, the volume that they would be roasting as well. But besides their K-cup connection, just because they're a big company doesn't mean that they're doing anything evil, wrong, or and
look,
and they're not bad people.
It doesn't mean that the company isn't doing. It doesn't mean that they are or they aren't doing anything evil.
Yeah.
What I want people to understand is the way to affect an organization is to start a dialogue with them or to be a part of them.
Yeah.
And start triggering some different thinking, like the reason that women have the rights that we have is because we infiltrated the patriarchy, we infiltrated government, we infiltrated all of these organizations. It's women like you and me that have, like you and I, that have worked our asses off to be in the positions that we're in today. That's how you affect change.
Yeah.
You speak with someone like Alec and you understand that Alec is a smart guy who is well-versed in coffee, and he wants to be a part of something that is considerate. He wants to be a part of creating ideas for a company that don't damage the environment. We talked about it on the podcast, and this is another thing. Any motherfucker that's coming after me because of this and hasn't had the general courtesy of listening to the conversation, kindly go fuck yourself. I have no problem saying that. Yeah. Kindly go. Anne's like,
no, that's all good. No.
Kindly go fuck yourself. Go on. So it's just like being what?
In the roasting room where you just, anyway, it's all good.
Yeah. No, it's seriously, it's like, I mean, you as a roaster, I'm sure can appreciate what you've roasted in companies that were doing 10 ton a week, right?
Yeah, easily. Yeah.
How huge an operation was that?
Like on the grand scheme of things, it was really only, I think at the time, it was, I would say, medium, verging on breaking into large. Yeah. It was still a very much family-run business that just happened to be starting to pump out, a truckload of, coffee.
But it's an operation, right? Like doing something
100%. Like oh, yeah, definitely. And I think the interesting thing that I find it fascinating also too when coffee companies, we all start small, and then as we grow, we naturally have to start embracing. This is where the whole production and manufacturing. Yep. Well, not so much that, but we've got to kind of like, we have to grow up. And if we don't grow up, and we have to embrace better practices, we have to embrace more of a corporate culture, which I think mixing into coffee can sometimes be quite fascinating, because then I find coffee, because we do start small, we're running ourselves, but then when you start bringing in the corporate layers, it's then very much governed by the financials. And then I see that little bit of clashing between finance and the practical hands-on aspect of coffee. But that's just naturally part of then companies growing and operating better and smartly and efficiently. But then, yeah, it's just that part of that whole growth, and then embracing things. You have to bring in corporate programs and elements and
protocols
and protocols, and it does shift the dynamic a little bit. And I can see and then people then start to see that as that corporate culture potentially strangling the creativity of what you started with and all that kind of stuff. And so whether it's a bit of a misunderstanding on it's a big fat massive corporate company, it's got to be evil because it's managing all the different layers in certain ways. You see definitely pros and cons of that whole style of when you see when we saw in the last year a lot of I call them mothership companies coming along and buying all the smaller companies. And then the smaller companies kind of like looking up and going, wow, now I have to work within the realm of what the mothership, so to speak, is telling us and how to operate. And you see that filtering down all the way through down to production, the influence of what they need to be doing. And so that I can see that as an interesting dynamic in coffee, especially in roasting in particular. And yeah, and if people haven't had that exposure to that, again, you can sort of see where they would get that impression of it's an evil,
absolutely,
evil company.
But that's a really immature way, in my opinion. Like it's a very misguided way of looking at it, because the world isn't as tiny as you think it is, and these, as companies grow, they have a logistical commitment to their customer base. To deliver on a product that meets the requirements and the standards that their customers have become accustomed to. And all of a sudden, if you've gone from a company that has been serving your customers and happy to cop the costs on, the losses that you get from sometimes serving a particular micro lot because you happened to be lucky enough to win it at auction, and, you're just going to serve it at the usual price, maybe a dollar or so extra. When you're serving, I don't know, 250, 300 customers a day, that seems like feasible. As you grow, let's say you take that and you've got 15 cafes, that hit hurts a lot more. From a sourcing perspective, you're not able to do that when you've got that many cafes. Same thing with roasting. I mean, you look at the idea of sourcing enough coffee to roast 100,000 kilos per day.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Day. And the number of problems that come with that. Again, I have heard mixed. I've spoken to people who, and trust me, before I did that episode with him, I started putting the feelers out to people who know people who are buying for Nestle, just to try and get an understanding of what Nestle's green practices are. And I asked him before we got on the podcast, can we talk about green buying? He said, look, I'm not here as a representative of Nestle. I'm here as me. Anything I can answer, I will answer. But if I don't know about it, I'm not going to be able to talk about it.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I'm not a green buyer for Nestle. I can't answer these questions. I can absolutely talk to you about how we approach ideation and how we come up with ideas and what kinds of things that we're focusing on. But I can't talk to you about green buying because I don't know about green buying. So, we did talk about things like how they're the number one producer of packaging in the world.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right. So, you talk about those kinds of things. You try an understanding of where they're coming at with that, and something that I can't remember if we said it on air or off air, but a really interesting thing that you come to realize, and me as a business owner, I've pondered on it quite a lot since we had the conversation, was as you grow as a business, there are so many problems you don't anticipate. You don't anticipate that you're going to become the number one producer of packaging for the whole fucking world. and what kind of a carbon footprint that's going to leave. And you're constantly trying to do it better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, you look at that and you think, I'm the number one producer of packaging in the world, and automatically everybody's going to think I'm evil. Well, I get that. I honestly get that as someone who doesn't own a car, so I'm not contributing any more to the carbon footprint of the globe than I have to. I absolutely understand that, but they're producing the products, right? Isn't it a good thing that we have people like Alec that are there, that are trying to find ideas of how we solve these problems?
Yes. Yeah.
You know, I think that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, and that was probably the intention, even without you even realising, is to try and get that message out to everyone that it is being worked on. If, yes, potentially there may have been, you know, an issue, you know, in the past, but that, like I said, engage, get involved, and know that there is a solution being, you know, recognised and worked on.
Yeah, and
with roles like his. Yeah.
I don't know if there's evil green buying practices going on. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I don't know. I don't know. I definitely know that Nestle are fucking up the water supply in the sense that they are trying to buy up as much of the water market as possible.
Okay.
Right? I get that. Yep. That's not people like Alec that are doing that. That's happening in boardrooms.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, the people like us, the roasters, the baristas, the coffee people, we're not making those decisions. It's not fair for people to assume that Alec is evil because he works for Nestle. He's got a family, people. He's got to feed his family, and he is trying to be someone who is in a position that can affect great change within an organization. And we're better to do that than with ideation. And making the assumption that Nestle is deliberately out to fuck everybody over is like saying that the people that work for the company have no influence over what gets done. That's not. You know, humans are beautiful, creative, innovative, inspired beings that when presented with this idea of, well, this is the box you have to find the solution in, now go and do it. There's nothing that's saying that they're out there trying to fuck us all over.
Yeah. And you hit it on the head exactly when you said, unfortunately, it's happening in the boardrooms, and we've got no input into that part of it. Yeah.
And he spoke about how heartbreaking it can be when he comes up with an idea, or he sees an idea, he facilitates an idea with regards to coffee. He facilitates an idea, it gets tested, and he knows this would absolutely smash it in the market, but it lands in the market too early. The market's just not ready for it. Or, you know, it's like, there's a symbiotic relationship between what the specialty coffee market is doing right now and companies like Nestle and Starbucks. And, you know, I think it's people like you who you and the Scott Rayos of the world that are pushing right at the front of this is what we should be doing in roasting, right? So you're at the very tip of the education program where you're trying to push people to try different things and educate people to do things differently.
But to also be really clear on
what they're doing and why they're doing it and how they're doing it and what they're trying to achieve, and all the things we want people to be doing, right? The bigger companies are watching. That was the whole point of Alec and I coming together. The relationship between a company like Elixir and Nestle is symbiotic because a company like Nestle needs there to be a company like Elixir that takes a new product, gets it out into the market, tests it, and sees if it's going to work.
Groundwork down.
Exactly. Right?
Yep.
And then when it's time for me to sell my company, they've been watching me the whole time. that then they take that and they do it 100 times better than me, and they plug it into their distribution center and they get it out into the world.
Yep.
But without a company like Elixir, they come up with an idea, they test it, and they give it about 35 seconds to see if the market likes it.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, I'm happy to sit here and eat brown rice for 3 years because let's face it, that's what happens with all business owners.
Yep.
I'm prepared to sit here and back the hell out of this kid of mine that is Elixir and eat brown rice for 3 years to see how I can make it work. You know, there's a reason why Nestle bought, who was it? They bought Intelli and they bought, who is it? Was it Stumptown?
Yes.
Or did PTs buy? No, PTs have got Bird Rock. Somebody bought, so Stumptown and Intelli were purchased, right? Intelli wasn't 100%, and Blue Bottle.
Yeah.
Right? These companies are getting purchased by the big companies because what we're doing is specialty coffee is the next generation of what these big companies are going to be doing. That's the point of having these kinds of things that are happening at the forefront. We're a tiny bit of the market, then we slowly make our way as becoming the new
main
way
part of the market. Yeah.
Right. Which is why Starbucks Reserve now exists.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like Starbucks Reserve came because of the third wave specialty push that the roasters and baristas and cafe owners all had when they were right on the edge of innovation with regards to this new idea of the local cafe that was selling specialty coffee. We did the hard work in getting people on board, drinking these new kinds of coffees, understanding what specialty meant, and we did a really shit job of it, if I'm honest with you. The majority of people still don't understand what specialty coffee means. They just think it's a feeling that you get in a cafe. Right? That's this convoluted word of specialty. They don't know what a specialty roaster is. Oh, does that mean that they have latte art? Right?
Yep.
And the work that you're doing is going to end up filtering back into a company like Nestle because they're buying up the companies that are going to be housing the roasters that you're educating.
Yep.
I mean, it's an absolutely a symbiotic relationship that people need to stop hating on. Like, please stop coming at me if you have not listened to that episode.
Yeah, and the whole way, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's one of those outrage culture things that I'm really not a fan of, that we seem to be evolving at. People see no shit. Earlier today, I got a message from somebody saying, I can't believe you'd speak to somebody who works for such an evil corporation. After seeing, like, we put the first 5 minutes of each episode.
A few little snippets. Yeah.
I'm like, did you listen to the episode?
I didn't get a chance, unfortunately. No, but I will now.
not you, but this girl.
Yeah, this person.
She said that. I'm like, have you listened to it? And this person wants to come on this podcast. And she said, no, but I saw that you associated his name with the company. I'm like, that's all the information you've got? Like, based on just that, I'm meant to not have somebody on the podcast?
Yeah, because.
Go ahead.
No, exactly what you said. Yeah, just because of that association with the name, but then not understanding, again, the purpose of the podcast is to
start a dialogue.
Yeah.
And figure out what the fuck's going on. Like,
exactly.
How do we? Yeah. I'm hoping I get to speak to green bean buyers from Nestle. I want to understand what's going on.
That would be really cool. Yeah.
I want to speak to the roasters in the factory. I want to know what it feels like to roast 100 fucking ton a day. Like, what does that feel? Aren't you interested?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I know that there is 1 ton roasters out there. So in my mind, I'm just like, oh, it's only 100 roasts. Like, I can see that happening in, a fairly big facility, and they're probably going 24/7. And then just the whole management of the green and the machinery and just everything would be, it'd be really fascinating. That's.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, and that's like, again, production and manufacturing, which it's coming back to that whole appropriate sort of like processes that we, again, when we get that dreamy romantic, oh, I'm going to be a roaster, I'm going to go and, you know, do it and everything. And then you get into the nitty gritty of it. And if you don't have good procedures and processes in place, then it's not going to work. Yeah.
I'm fascinated to understand like how you go from creating instant coffee to making 6,000 cups a second. You know, like I want to know who's responsible for that flavor profile. Is it all scientists?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, they would no doubt. Yeah, they would have definitely research teams in terms of developing that product.
Exactly.
It's going to suit the certain machines that they have out in the market.
And how does that would growing, like in growing coffee growing, like climate change, what are the real effects of that on the flavor of Nescafe Blend 43? I want to know about it.
Yeah, and
that doesn't make me evil people.
No, definitely not. No, definitely not.
I mean, it's so nice to sit there in your ivory fucking tower and you know, feel all entitled over your, you know, 92 scoring, you know, whatever geisha.
Yeah.
But let's be real, there's probably 55 people in the world that are drinking that right this moment.
Yes. Yep. Exactly.
And that's not going to make that big a difference to the majority of coffee growers in the world. No. But I promise you, you make a change to Nescafe Blend 43, that's shifting a global market.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is, definitely.
Something I wanted to I know we're almost at the two-hour mark, but something I want to talk about and end on a really fun note was your fire starter event.
Oh, yes.
That looked like it was fun.
Yeah, it's awesome. So
dude, that looked so fun.
Yeah, so I had this, so we've done it for 3 years now. And the idea is to always have a producer it's always green to roasted. That's always the focus. So the goal is to always have a producer present. And then a range of other speakers, either whether it's a trader and then another roaster. So I do a lot of like work with Rob Hoos. So we got together when we were doing work on the Roasters Guild. We were on the committee together and on the education committee. Yeah. And I think it was, oh my God, it was 2.5, 3 years ago where we were going through this motion talking about different bits of roasting and the myth of different machines producing a certain flavour. And so Rob being Rob, he's really cool. He'll just go, well, let's just prove it. So we've spent the last 1.5 years doing a lot of research on can you taste the roasting system. And so we got the same coffee roasted on 3 different machines. And then the idea was to then we could start doing tastings and use the event like Firestarter to do research. So then I said, well, okay, then it'd be really cool to have producers present. And it's always good to do it around MICE as well because there's always everybody visiting. So it's great to take advantage of everybody being in town and sort of like frame them up in a really good fun, with a fun event, and then they can, you know, head into MICE all excited, you know, going to see everybody. So yeah, so the idea is always to have, I think the first year we had the guys from La Palma El Toucan talking, and they did a really cool video because I was really passionate about dry milling and roasters not understanding. To me, that's the final piece in the puzzle with grading, and especially coming back to like specialty before the coffee then gets, you know, prepared for export and kind of goes from there. So I said, can you help us better understand dry milling? So then we had him. We also had Benji from Q Coffee in Sydney talk about Indonesian coffee, and he had one of his Indonesian producers come along as well. And then we had a scientist from Monash talking about some research they were doing on measuring certain things in the roaster. And then initially the first year we Skyped in with Rob because he couldn't come along. And then last year we really started digging into all the research and tastings, and Rob came out. And then the same again this year. So we had Luis from Brazil, because I do a bit of work with Capricornio in Brazil each year. And then we had Rob doing his lectures. And then with me this year, so we decided to have Luis in one section, Rob in one section doing more profile analysis and stuff like that. And then this year I was really passionate about having a live aspect. So then we did live roasting, and it was, the premise was to have experienced roasters come along, because I find there's a lot of ways and information for people that are getting into roasting to sort of like read, look on the internet, all that kind of stuff. But when you start getting experienced, you naturally go down rabbit holes and you start, you know, trying and testing things. You get a little bit lost and all that kind of stuff. So the idea was to have it to be focusing more on experienced roasters. And I said, let's just roast. Let's just talk about what we're doing, what's driving my decisions, why am I starting with that temperature and turning the gas, you know, up at this point, and what's happening and all that kind of stuff. And you'd be surprised, even as an experienced roaster, you might go, oh, that's a really cool technique. I might try that. I can take that back and have a go. And so then we the guys from Coffee Net were really lovely. They donated some coffee from a producer. We had the same coffee and 3 different processes. So for the live roasting, we dialed in the washed and the natural process to sort of demonstrate then the different ways you would think about like roasting those coffees at a particular batch size, and, you know, it just brings up everything. And it was really cool. We put a GoPro over the trier, because the groups, when we split up into the groups, it was big enough that you would feel a bit, you know, cramped standing around the roaster. So half the group could stand back and look. We had 2 big TVs set up. So you could watch the roasting on one and then have the profiles on the other screen, and then they would just rotate around for each roast, so you could get in close and all that kind of stuff, and just geek out and just talk roasting and just and it was more about, this is what I'm doing and this is why I'm doing it, and it just reminds you about things to focus on and look at, and, you know, data points, sensory points, just everything. So the idea with
Wonderland.
And again, giving them an opportunity to talk to someone like Luis, who he's an agronomist, he's a producer, he's a trader, like he plays a lot of really different roles with what he does with Capricornio, but he's the kind of person too where you can ask him, you know, really, really as many questions as you want. And the idea was to give roasters that chance to just ask that question, like, how do I buy my coffee better? How do I know what to do? Just anything that they would want to know about origin from that perspective. So the goal is then always meant to keep Firestarter with that whole producer through to roasted aspect, and provide a nice opportunity. It's probably also too for people that have done consulting and training with me. It's more about also providing a nice platform for the Equilibrium kind of group to get together and put faces to names and all that kind of stuff.
Find your people.
But it's not exclusive to them. It's definitely always open to everybody, 100%. But it's really kind of cool, because I've also got like a forum group for everyone that's been through the consulting and training, so they can stay in touch, continue to ask questions and help each other.
Awesome.
And so there's this nice little Equilibrium group ticking away in the background, and, you know, they're all, you know, staying friends, because it's really nice when especially when you do the roasting course and you've got your roasting buddy and you want to stay in touch and kind of continue that connection as you go through your roasting. And it's been really nice seeing how some of them help each other out, you know, with various things, you know, whether it's equipment advice, or they might go in on a pallet buy together because they can't afford to, you know, to bring in coffee. So they'll do things like that and help each other out. So it's really cool. Firestarter was just something I wanted to do, as just part of the Equilibrium kind of training and consulting, and give roasters a chance to just geek out, get exposure to things they might not get a chance to get exposure to, and just keep on providing good positive connection and just information and learning, and just know that they've got somewhere to reach out to if they need to, you know, just if they just want to ask a question or know something.
And this is your 3rd year you did it, right?
Yes.
You just did the 3rd one at MICE, because the video looks so fun.
Oh, absolutely.
Last.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was really lovely. Yeah, and so, but the idea is to always make it a very full-on interactive day. So there's
those things always are, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. But then it's really nice because at the end of it, everyone just kicks back and relaxes, and you just have a drink and chat and everything, and but just showing them and helping them see different things. So there's always Rob's really funny. Like last year, we always do a tasting exercise. And so part of that last year, we set up the press pots for tasting. And he said, okay, this year, we're going to put the exact same coffee in every press pot. Because generally when we were doing our Can You Taste the Roasting System exercises, we did triangulations. Okay. And so the intention was then to put each coffee in a press pot and just see what people thought of the taste. And he said, for this, let's just brew the exact same coffee, but they're numbered 1, 2, 3, just to start testing people and the way that they start assessing and thinking biases about, all that kind of stuff. And then we said, okay, let's talk about the coffee in the press pots. What did you think? And people are going, oh, yeah, no, number 2 was like, was this, and number 3 was that. And then Rob's just kind of like, I initially thought it was going to be really fun, but I feel really bad saying it's the exact same coffee. And everyone just went, oh, no way.
So that framed them up like idiots then, don't they?
A little bit, but the idea was to frame them up for when they were heading into the triangulation tasting, is to get them in the frame of mind of really focusing on their decision process and how they get influenced by what they see and how things are set up. Just sort of control that whole bias factor and stuff like that. And it was really funny. People remembered this year and they saw the press pots and just went, it's not the same coffee, is it? And I went, no.
Well, you at least think about it from now on.
It was really funny. Yeah. So this year we did the same coffee with the same development ratio, but 3 different times. Because we were focusing on data points and what people make the mistake of focusing on too much to define their roasting. And then, of course, then there's profile discussion, and it all just starts leading into really cool things about, okay, so when you're roasting, again, it just comes back to know your green, know your machine, and know your flavors. And then how are you supporting yourself with appropriate data collection and stuff like that. So there's always an educational aspect. You just don't walk in and, oh, there's a cup of coffee, I'm going to drink. Like you walk in the door and it's on. Like the day starts like sort of straight away. But there's always then it leads to something further along in the day in terms of it always comes full circle. Yeah, at some point. Yeah, it's really fun.
So much work goes into planning those things.
Oh my goodness, yes. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, dude.
Definitely.
That 3-day conference that was in Sydney, and then when did the same thing in Melbourne.
Yeah, definitely.
It's going to be an annual event. So
excellent.
We're doing it again this year.
Yep.
We will only be going to one city, but what we'll do is we'll do a different city every year.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, that'd be really good. Yeah, definitely. And I think that, absolutely. And I think that would definitely, for the community here in Australia, you can understand, cities like Brisbane and Perth and even Adelaide constantly seeing things happening in Sydney and Melbourne, giving them a chance to get some more exposure and access, to these sorts of things. The community in Perth, for example, is just thriving. It's massive.
That's where I'd like to do it next year.
Yeah, and I'm actually, amazing community there. And I think it's,
awesome.
They're just amazing. Love them to bits over there. Hi, all the Perth roasters.
Yeah. Shout out to the people the guys from Perth, because a lot of them came to the Melbourne event.
They did, yes.
Which was so great. It was really, really great. So we're doing this year in Sydney. It'll be towards the very end of this year. We're looking at November to be the event. And it'll be we won't separate it out as cafe owners, roasters and baristas this time. We'll do 2 days, 2 very full days with a fun kickoff party, a fun dinner between the first day and the second day, and then a closing party. And it'll be in Sydney. And this is more than I've told anybody about this event so far. So you're getting the scoop here with Ann Cooper.
Awesome.
And we have a very special, the person who we are thinking of bringing out for it is someone who has not yet been to Australia.
Cool.
Which is going to be really, really exciting. We're in conversations with that person now. So
awesome.
Yeah, so it's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully my book will be out by the time that happens as well.
Oh, my goodness.
Which is funnily on coffee roasting. I've never roasted a batch in my life. It's not actually on coffee roasting. It's on having a career in a business as a coffee roaster, which is something that I am very well versed at. So So yeah, that'll be fun. I'm so hope you're going to be able to make it to Sydney
absolutely.
for that, because I'd love to have you on a panel.
That'd be amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Our industry is so lucky to have you, Anne. We're
Thank you.
So lucky to have you. And I am so glad that we got to meet at the last event.
Yes.
And I'm really hoping that you'll have some time to be on the panel for this year's event and as it grows. Because I really feel that the more we can celebrate the people who are actually invested the last couple of decades into our industry, the better we're going to be as an industry overall.
Yeah, and even for me to be able to help those coming through and recognizing, you know, you do kind of feel yourself, you know, as you get older, it's, you know, you are naturally, you know, kind of progressively like moving, you know, out and away. But if there's also a way to make sure that those that are coming through feel supported, and comfortable knowing that they've got people to reach out to, and help them along the way. That's what I really enjoy doing. Yeah.
Well, thank you, ma'am, for coming on this podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Honoured to have you on there. That was like 2 hours.
I know. I can't believe it's done already.
Please tell me that you're still you're not nervous. Like, didn't take you any time.
No, not at all. Yeah, but it was exactly what you said. It was just like you won't even realise all of a sudden that you're on a podcast, and it's just like, oh, okay. And now it's finished. Holy moly.
Us having a chat. Seriously, that's like 2 hours and 10 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
Thanks again. You're an absolute sweetheart, and you are a real champion of our industry. So thanks again. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Have an amazing rest of your day, darling. See you later.
You too. Thank you. Bye.